Glenn boy, long time. The last time I saw you
really
was pre-COVID.
Wales, believe it or not. Remember? For the first time ever. Yeah. But yeah, well, listen, first and foremost, thank you very much for the invite. I'm always incredibly kind of humble. I'm always slightly embarrassed to be asked to do these things, believe it or not. So I am, because it's like, well, people want to hear me talking nonsense for an hour. But anyway, hopefully I'll not talk too much nonsense. But
well,
I can't guarantee
this. If you were shooting the stuff pre-veg, we wouldn't be having a chat online. Just so you're not in case you're not aware, all right? This guy and I go back years ago, and he used to work for one of my mates. And thank God he left him because he became an amazing photographer. Whereas when you're a family photographer or shooting kids or whatever, it's not the best job on the planet at times, is it, Glenn?
It's enjoyable to a point, but I think it's more that thing where you kind of lose, I think, a little bit of well, you lose a little bit of, in my work, everything revolves around creativity to me, and I think you lose that a wee bit, or it's very hard to keep that creativity at front. But listen, any type of photography comes with its problems. You know, being a sort of commercial fashion photographer, that you have to deal with some very difficult clients. So it's not all roses. You know what I mean? Everything's got its pros and cons.
Before we get going, do you think that portrait photography has moved anywhere since we were doing it in the late 90s and early 2000s?
Good question. And first
Be
of all,
honest,
I have to say,
don't sit on a fence.
Not speed or trend, but I would hazard a guess that everything changes. I mean, I don't think everything can be the same as it was 15, 20 years ago. And I think I think it has changed, actually. Yeah. But I know my work's changed, and I think everything changes. I mean, things changes generally. Anyway, but I think technology changes as well. You know, I think the sort of people using mirrorless cameras sort of changes things up a wee bit, and nowadays a lot of people using constant lights. So, you know, little shifts in technology sort of on trends mean you sort of have to. Well, you sort of have to change to keep up to be relevant, I guess, don't you?
Do you think the portrait studio photographer, the family photographer, the baby photographer, that kind of photographer, do you think they've moved at all, really, honestly?
Well, not as much as other types of photography. And again, I think that's, yeah, you know, now that you think about it again, I don't want to talk too much about that because I'm not really working in that field. So it's I wouldn't want to be too detrimental. But I mean, yes, you're probably right. It probably has changed. That type of photography has probably changed the least out of all the sort of disciplines that you can mention.
Because look at that image in front of me here. We can sell that as a portrait, isn't it? You know, and I still, we'll chat later, but that should be able to be achieved by anybody at any studio throughout the world, realistically, shouldn't it? Now, I'm not taking anything away from you because that's a real talent that I'm seeing here, but I'm on about the creativity and the style and the edginess. I don't think we're seeing that in studios.
No, probably not. But I think you're 100% correct. But to be fair, also, for one of the great things about being a fashion photographer is it gives you that freedom to, you know, you're encouraged to do crazy weird stuff. So you know, it's kind of in the job description. So to an extent, that's one of the reasons why that's the type of photography I always wanted to do, because you've kind of got that free, most part, not everywhere, but to do what you want, you know. But I think it's very hard to bring that ethos into a more, you know, I think you need to have a very strong, you know, you need a strong character to kind of just say, well, no, this is how I'm going to do things. Do you know what I mean? It's very easy to slip back into that template of, well, I know somebody like this, so we'll just do that. You know,
Yeah.
it's hard to get out of that mindset, I think.
Thank you for that. I had to ask it, kind of thing, because I love your photography, and I think it belongs on the high street, and not just on kind of advertising boards and everything else with it. Look, we're going to look a variety of shoots. Yeah. I've just kind of grabbed, so these are 8 sessions, and I just kind of dragged some of the images that we're going to be looking at and things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll move over to Bridge,
yeah. So,
and we'll start anywhere you want. So
yeah.
Tell us about what's been going on with Glenn anyway. What happened to you?
So what happened to me? Oh, go. How long have you got? No, but one of the reasons when you asked me to do this, I thought, look, I could pull out a load of stuff over the last God knows how long times, you know, stuff that I'm really, really proud of and really like. And I thought that's kind of a bit of a pointless exercise, really, because what's more important, I think, is the stuff that we have literally done in the last. Basically, everything here was done post-COVID. So it's done in the last 2 years or year and a half, really, anyway. So I thought it was just good to show you what I've done, you know, under times that were kind of pretty, I guess, well, people for some. So you see, the first thing I want you to start is, you see if you go down to the thing that says lockdown selfies.
Yeah.
Go to that one, because this was a kind of interesting project, because this is the first thing we did in anger after COVID, because COVID happened March time, wasn't it? Late March 2020. Yeah. And what happened was, when the first sort of little sign of things easing off, so you're probably into that summertime, or you know, I can't remember exactly, but June maybe time, June, July, something like that. You're allowed to do stuff back in the studio, but you could only have like one person in the room or 2 person. You have to have a distance. You have your, you know, all the sort of rigmarole.
Yeah.
So what I thought was kind of cool, do this little project where the models are taking their own pictures, or not even models. A lot of these are just a mixture. There's a whole series of these. There's about 30 different people. We grab people from every sort of where, and the whole idea was, we set up a camera on a tripod with a ring flash, and then the subject triggered the picture. I left the room actually, and the subject then triggered the pictures themselves. So they basically, it was a take on the selfie picture, but done in the studio with a ring flash. So it was actually, I actually really enjoyed this process. I kind of liked the idea of creating a little project showing the times, and the very fact that, you know, society nowadays, everybody just sits and takes their own picture all the time. So I thought it'd be a good idea to just sort of mix it up and allow the people to take their own picture, but in a kind of, well, as you can see, the kind of way that we sort of put it together. So it was good. It was actually really, really good fun. And the only thing I wish that I'd done more of them. Do you know what I mean? Because before you knew it, then things had eased off again, and you were able to go back to sort of proper work. This was more like a really sort of nice personal project that we sort of put together just at that very, very early days, the first seeds of hope after COVID.
Did you see any of the agent provocateur stuff that they were releasing in lockdown? The lingerie
now you're asking me? I'm not sure.
Do you know what? That's what.
I know you're talking about.
They had to actually. They sent all cameras out to all of their. I can't remember what the agent provocateur models are called. Do you know what I mean? But they sent cameras out, and they just said, "Shoot yourself every day, and we'll edit them hard."
Yeah.
And that's what these girls were doing. And then Jojo Mama Baby, they had all their clothing range for the kind of the summer, which they couldn't do their shoot with. So they basically sent out all the clothing and cameras to anybody to shoot their campaigns for them. And when I was seeing all this stuff going through, I was thinking, I hope this is not the trend to come. But fair's fair, you know.
Yeah, thankfully not. But what it does do, it sometimes takes you out of your own head a wee bit, and it makes you maybe think about, sometimes we can kind of get, you know, too overindulgent or over things. Sometimes it is nice just to simplify things right down. And I know probably some of the work you see here isn't probably a good example of me doing that, but I've actually tried to get back to basics in a lot of the work I've done. Because I've probably been guilty of the past of having, you know, why have one light when you can have a dozen lights? You know, and you're sort of flexing and you're sort of leading prowess a little bit. Whereas sometimes it's cool, and other times it's a bit of a load of nonsense, really. So every now and again, I think you just have to. I think it's a good exercise for us all to kind of get back to absolute basics.
So do you think you'd do something like this again, or is it just time now?
No, I would love. Again, my big regret about this is not getting more people in at the time. I mean, in an ideal world, I would have loved to have like 60, made a whole proper project, and you never know what happens from them. When it goes to a gallery, you make a book out of it. But my only little, that's my big regret, because it's sort of lost. It's lost sort of uniqueness now because we're not in COVID, and so you can't really. It doesn't have the same appeal, I don't think. But I might do something along a similar type of lines and use a lot more kind of for the use of a better word, real people, as opposed to a lot of these are sort of model type people that I'm working with, you know. So I would love to do that. And again, it gets back to, I think sometimes you have to do your own wee thing, your own personal projects, just to kind of get the creative juices going.
No, agreed. Good. And any particular image you want to look at with these, or was it just a kind of quick flick through like it did?
It was more of a quick flick through because they're all the same. They're all lit exactly the same. There's nothing it's just a ring flash. I think they made a bit of a fill with an umbrella just to make sure the background was a bit even, but that was it. And I thought it was just a very, very a fun exercise, and I think it's something that, you know, sometimes we all should do something just out of our comfort zone a little bit. Even though I didn't actually have that much to do with these, say the girls took them themselves. So, but you know, it was. Well, I mean, yeah, we added in a little bit. I kind of like the aesthetic of there's a couple there, you know, there's the girls holding an old Bowen's flash head and stuff, just to add a little bit of extra interest and stuff. So it wasn't just a complete plain white background. So I just, it is what it is. But yeah, I thought that's how I would kick off, because that was the very first thing we did. And the next sort of big sort of project, or the next big shoot that we did after that one, was this one. So this was done in the summer. Okay.
Which one was that? Sorry.
Section there. Projection on the top row.
Oh, projection. Yep, got it.
Projection. So this was the first major project or major shoot that we did. It was actually for this designer. After this would have been the summer of 2020. So the whole idea about this was to project all of these, like it's images of old master paintings projected onto the wall, mixed with like grungy elements, whether it be there's like a liquidy thing there or this pop. So this was all done with you've maybe heard me talk before, but you know the projection, the optical snoots.
Yep.
So I got slides, you know, just old 6x6 slides. You can get those digitalized. I mean, if you have a digital image, you can get those made into slides now, which is really good. And then you put the slides in the optical snoot and project it onto the wall. So there was maybe about 2 or 3 slides at any one time projected onto this wall. And then there was just one other snoot that basically just we picked out lighting on. It's like this particular picture, you get the big shadow because the light's coming in very directional. But again, I kind of really love this type of thing because again, it was something that was very completely different, where you were in as much not lighting the subject, the part, you were lighting the scene, which was kind of interesting. So in many ways, you were kind of, it was more like theatrical lighting or lighting for movies, where you were lighting a stage set or a scene, as opposed to what a typical portrait photographer lights the model or the subject. So it was kind of, it was a very sort of interesting, again, way of approaching things. but I kind of liked how they turned out.
So can you talk us through the image in front of us for a minute, if possible? So how many projection snoots would you have, and whereabouts would they be and things?
So we would have one main snoot pretty much pointed straight at the wall, which is probably this arc type thing, okay? Then there would have been another projection projected onto the floor, given that sort of blue with the red model. And then there's another projection coming in with some of these sort of like grungy type effects coming down the sides, okay? The lighting on the girl, so that you can probably see there's one light coming very, very directional in from her right, camera left. You can see it's causing a bit of a shadow. Then there's also another sort of kicker light coming in from her left, camera right, and you can see that's causing sort of big shadow up on this other side too. So it's everything that you can do with portrait lighting. You're sort of breaking a lot of the rules. You're kind of, cross lighting and doing crazy stuff. But really, the way we lit the person was we projected onto the center of the wall first, and then we just worked out how we could light the person without too much light falling onto the background or the set. Because once light fell on the set, as you can see here, there's like big slashes of white light, which I kind of liked, but it was actually because normally you'd have a light at 45 degrees, the subject or straight in front, but you couldn't do that because then it would just basically wash out the projection. Sense?
Brilliant. The clients, do they worry about the colouring of the clothing and things really, or are you kind of told about that in advance if you need a clean light, or how does it work?
Yeah. Well, yes, it can be a problem, but you have to remember that sometimes when you get into this very sort of high-end fashion type things, typically people do, and it's not like you're doing a lookbook for a very sort of client or an e-commerce type thing. You have to see everything very clearly. With something like this, that's more avant-garde anyway, you do have a bit of a free rein. So typically you will talk to the client and say, like, I've got an idea and I'd love to do this. And if they're happy, go for it. Now, saying that, this is what they are typically like their statement pictures for a lookbook. Once they'll typically have more sort of commerce type pictures if they're trying to sell on their website. Do you know what I mean? So typically for this sort of client, you would do both. Does that make sense? So you're getting pictures that grab and then you've got the stuff if they're trying to sell it. But I do that with nearly all my clients. You've kind of got the least of better word arty pictures, and then you've got the e-commerce pictures, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Because they need column inches, isn't it? Or they need to get viral. And these are the kind of images that get them viral, get them column inches, get them front cover of a magazine, whatever it would be, isn't it? And the plain images for the e-commerce is not going to be doing that, is it?
No, that's it exactly. I mean, some people are happy enough, but I mean, different clients have different different needs. If you're just selling like, the job I was doing today was sort of more like outerwear, waterproof coats. It's not the most glamorous thing, but they have the same ethos really. So today we were out on locations. It's all very lifestyle and it's all good, but then we do studio stuff as well. So it's I think you find that with most sort of clothing companies that's the case. I think it just depends how crazy you go more than anything.
I've got to be honest, I'm not giving you lip service here now. I'm in love with this image. It's just
do you know what? Well, you can see the things that are wrong. You can see this sort of like real harsh shadow coming over. But you know what? I'm not trying to be too modest here either, but you do have to pay. For my line of work, there's so much goes into, well, the dress design herself, but there goes into the hair design, the makeup, the stylist. It's a big team effort. I couldn't do these type of pictures on my own. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's something that tends to get forgotten. This line of photography, you do have to pay a lot of lip service to your team, if you like. You can't be underestimated.
Do you get offended when people think there's a load of post-production going on?
Oh, I think it's last year when people
Sorry,
get
mate.
what?
Do you get offended when people think you're actually doing post-production and these are not straight out of camera kind of elements? Do you go, no, this is how I shot it?
Yeah, I used to get really, but I don't really care. It is what it is. I think so much of it now is stuff is just thrown online. I don't think people pay that much attention to your work. So I mean, in all honesty, so you can't get up about things. You kind of just put it. And besides all, this is all done on camera, but at the same time, there's a lot of retouching,
Yeah,
not manipulation, but retouching. You know, they spend a lot of time retouching skin and hair and all that type of thing. So everything related to a point. But
good.
yeah, I sometimes we go, oh, that's all you've done that in Photoshop, and you go like, oh Jesus Christ, I just spent like 10 hours working out how to look at this thing.